Happy holidays, Canada. In a more divided and uncertain world, the holiday season is an opportunity to slow down, reflect, and focus on what really matters. This is a season of joy for families, and I hope you find time to rest, reconnect, and celebrate with the people that you love the most. For Christians, Christmas holds a special meaning. It's a time to celebrate the birth of Jesus, to rejoice in the light that he brings, and to recommit to follow his example of service, forgiveness, and generosity. For Canadians of all traditions, the holidays remind us that there can be hope after despair, that light follows darkness. This is a time to remember those in need of comfort, those struggling to get by, those grieving a loved one. A time to help with a call, a visit, or an act of kindness that reminds someone that they are not alone. And although this year has brought more than its share of challenges to our country, we've also been reminded that we are fortunate to be part of one extraordinary, generous, and caring nation. That we're strongest when we're united, when we look out for each other, when we take care of each other. Merry Christmas and happy holidays, Canada, from my family to yours.
There's the big guy, guys. There's the big guy. Mark Carney, Black Rock and Mark Carney. Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope everybody had a great Christmas day. But what I want to talk about today is the USMCA. So it's gotten so much traction, obviously, because it directly affects Canada with the tariff regime, with everything that we've agreed previously. And why I think this is quite interesting is because the automakers in the U.S. are actually complaining about the regime, right? So I believe that there's a bit of a deeper story here than just automakers complaining, right? It's the industry's complaining, but there's obviously a wider reason why the U.S. is conducting this repatriation of manufacturing in the fashion that it's doing. And obviously, people, when they hear tariffs and they hear trade wars, you think it's chaos, right? Or like ego-driven politics. Everybody has this big opinion that Trump is crazy, that he's a lunatic. He has no idea what he's doing. He's driving the U.S. back 100 years. But what's happening with manufacturing is not random in the U.S. It's a deliberate shift in power and leverage and sovereignty. All of this is being exercised through trade. And the most plastic way of seeing it is in the auto industry, right? It's that manufacturing base that exists. So just going to get into the article real quick here. So it says, the 6-year review of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, is not scheduled to take place until July, but automakers in the United States are already voicing their support for the Continental Free Trade Pact and calling for the elimination of the Trump tariffs. In congressional testimony and submissions to U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer, automakers, domestic and foreign, are suggesting various changes to the agreement, but urging Washington to uphold it. They also point to the financial strain and uncertainty and loss of investments caused by the import taxes imposed by U.S. President Donald Trump. The agreement, based on the North American Free Trade Agreement that preceded it, has allowed makers of cars and auto parts to boost efficiency and reduce costs by moving production back and forth across borders. There's no question that the USMCA is critical to the auto industry, said Patrick Anderson, the chief executive officer of a Michigan-based consultancy, Anderson Economic Group, given that it's not surprising that the auto industry is intensely concerned about preserving it. So here's one thing that I want to point out here. So this is the USMCA is a great thing, honestly, for trade. I think it's a really great thing. Canada, the US, and Mexico should have some kind of free trade policy uniting the continent kind of under one umbrella. Because the continent under one umbrella is more or less a population of like 500 million people. So it's not an insignificant amount of people, right? And if the continent works as one, then it makes sense, right? But when it doesn't, right? When it doesn't, the biggest loser in all of this is the US when it doesn't. Because what ends up happening, and the article doesn't get into this, right? What ends up happening is because every country is a sovereign country, essentially, they make their own policies, they, make their own laws and all of that. They make their own trade agreements with other foreign countries, right? Because of all of this, the US is at a serious disadvantage, right? Because what you have then is you'll have manufacturers directly go to Mexico, for instance, or to Canada instead of the US in order to sell those same cars in the US, right? Because no one really cares about the Mexican market per se, or the Canadian market is just like California has more people than Canada collectively, right? So it's like it's not an insurmountable amount of people, it's not, but it's also not 300 million people, right? So it's like, everybody's going to North America because of the US, right? Because it's the biggest market, it's the wealthiest market, and that's the place you want to be, right? That's where everybody gets rich. It's the US. That's just the way it is. No one really cares about Mexico. But then you have Mexico going in for a bid to join BRICS, right? And you have Mexico signing all of these trade deals with China, opening up all these massive EV plants and all of these things for the sole purpose of selling into the US, using cheaper labor, getting into the US market under a competitive advantage, right? So this whole article is just avoiding that whole conversation, right? It's just looking at it from a very plastic point of view. I'm an auto manufacturer. I'm working within this framework. I'm getting bit in the ass. They are. They have certain parts coming in from Mexico, certain parts coming in from Canada. Some of it's being manufactured in the US. And that kind of arrangement, has worked for the most part, right? But it gives the US a massive disadvantage because of supply chains, because you can then have foreign powers dictate certain elements of your supply chain. And the auto industry is not, manufacturing in general is not just like some willy-nilly industry. It's not like the vitamin industry, right? Where it's like, yeah, I can live without the vitamin industry, right? Manufacturing, and car manufacturing specifically, this is a high-tech technology. This is high-tech stuff. That's number one. Number two, they're expensive goods. So the finished product is expensive. There's a lot of money that's coming into it. It supports, indirectly, it supports like, I don't know how many other industries, like subservient industries to the wider auto industry, right? Because you have companies that are making glass, you have companies that are making like oil filters and all of this stuff, right? So it casts a wide net, right? And when this isn't mainly focused in the US or in the given country, it really opens up a lot of opportunity for a non-benevolent power, to put it that way, for a bad actor to come in and start putting pressure on the US internally, domestically, like China. And we're seeing this happen. The US isn't just repatriating cars, right? It's not just repatriating cars. It's repatriating microchips, right? It used Taiwan as a springboard for microchips, right? And now they want to bring that back to the US. Why? Because China isn't the China of the 1990s. It was like, some shithole China everybody was slave labor working for $1 a day. That doesn't exist anymore. China's highly automated and it's highly competitive and it has a lot of people. And it's getting slowly but surely, it's getting aggressive. It's actively making those claims on Taiwan. And so if China takes Taiwan, the semiconductor industry is going to be fucked around the world. The global semiconductor industry is going to be fucked around the world, and the whole entire Western world is going to be screwed if that happens. As an example, then the whole world is going to be forced essentially to use Chinese microchips for AI, for whatever, because China is going to have the only supply of 5th, 6th generation microchips and the know-how in the world, right? And right now they have a great manufacturing base for microchips. Taiwan is the leader, but they're all basically US companies. So that's why that's being repatriated. You do the same thing with vehicles, right? So this isn't, I don't feel like this is that shocking, this move by the US. They're doing it because the world is polarizing. And when the world polarizes, you want to have control of your core industries. And auto manufacturing is a core industry. If you want to sell in the US, or if you want to manufacture in North America, you're going to want to manufacture in the US because that's the market that you intend to sell in, right? It's not Mexico. Mexico may to a much smaller degree. So, in the article gets into it down here, right? So the USMCA has an existential threat now that it hasn't had in decades. Mr. Anderson said by phone, "We have a U.S. president that openly questioned whether we should have not just the USMCA, but wide-ranging free trade agreements between the United States and our major trading partners, and that's a risk. That's a risk that is new to the relationship we have between the United States and Canada, and it's new to the auto industry in this century. Canadian and Mexican-made cars imported by U.S. companies face 25% tariffs on the non-U.S. content. Mr. Trump skirted the free trade agreement by using Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act of 1962 to impose tariffs on imported cars, metals, and other goods, declaring them a threat to national security, because they are. In contrast, cars imported from the UK, South Korea, Japan, and Europe are tariffed at 15%. Exactly, because, and so this might, the math here seems stupid because it's like, these companies are all working within the USMCA. So it shouldn't make sense that something coming in from abroad is tariffed less than something that's being manufactured within the USMCA borders. But a finished product coming in from abroad and just being tariffed less isn't a threat because it's not manufacturing, it's a straight import. The US is trying to protect its manufacturing because it's trying to repatriate its industrial sovereignty. That's essentially what this is about. It's about the US repatriating industrial sovereignty. That's the best way of putting it. I mean, and I've talked about, these types of things. I've alluded to Canada needing to do something similar in different programs, because this is really the way that you grow an independent, sovereign economic policy, is by you manufacturing your own goods, selling them domestically. If someone wants to come in from the side, great. But you're gonna manufacture in Canada then for selling in Canada, right? This is the problem that the US is facing. And a good thing to know is that, like, the big three manufacturers in reality, so you have General Motors, you have Ford, and you have the Stellantis group, right? So Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram. They both, like, all three of them have major production lines in Mexico and Canada, right? And it's around 30 to 40% of the vehicles sold in the US by US manufacturers contain major foreign content in their assembly. So this is Canada and Mexico. 30 to 40%. That's huge. And so this is 30 to 40% of manufacturing jobs that could exist in the US, right? And you need to be selfish. You're running your own country. The US doesn't really need to care about Canada in that sense. The US needs to care about the US, right? Canada needs to worry about Canada. This is how healthy nations think about things, right? Japan doesn't allow a company would never allow, let's say, the U.S. like Ford to go manufacture vehicles in the Philippines and then have them shipped into Japan under like cheaper labor laws, right? For instance, just using it as an example, it would never happen. They don't like they're not. That's not going to happen. They're defending their internal market because that's what a healthy nation does. You want to defend your own market. If someone wants to sell in your market, sure, you're going to be tariffed 15%. Come sell. You're working at a competitive disadvantage. That's it. This is the way I kind of see things, right? It's manufacturing. It's not just an economic sector, man. It is a strategic capability. If you're able to manufacture things, like not a lot of nations have that capability, and if they once had them, they've now lost them. Like the UK. UK has like zero manufacturing capacity. Every serious country understands this. Germany protects or used to protect their manufacturing until the Greens came into power and completely fucked their economy royally, closed down nuclear power plants, blew up after the pipeline with Russia was blown up, and they put all these tariffs on Russian energy and steel and all of that. Their manufacturing costs just went through the roof. Now is the first time that German companies, auto manufacturers, are looking to expatriate their manufacturing because it's unaffordable in Germany. Volkswagen, VW in Dresden closed its factory. It shut down its doors. It employed like 16,000 employees. Manufacturing jobs. Goodbye. It's too expensive. France does the same thing. They protect everything as much as they can. I've mentioned Japan. The United States is now acting on the same logic. It used to have this logic, right? But decades of neoliberal policies and all of that have started. It allowed businesses to get lazy and look for the bottom line more than actually protect U.S. industry, right? And so that's what Trump's tariff strategy is. It's not about punishing anybody or chasing short-term efficiency, and that's all this is. That's all this is. It's about repatriating manufacturing, keeping it domestic, so that no one can gain leverage on them. They care about who can gain leverage on them, and they're worried that the Chinese can gain leverage on them on their own soil. This is 100%. And that's what happens when manufacturing is outside of your own borders. Someone can squeeze supply chains in a foreign country like Canada or Mexico and mess up your domestic economy. This is what they're trying to avoid. This is exactly what they're trying to avoid. And so Canada is really how do I put this? Canada is really just we just got the short end of the stick in this whole situation, right? And it's simply because we've treated manufacturing as an efficiency problem to be optimized, right? Instead of a capability to be preserved. We've systematically been destroying our own manufacturing capabilities. And that choice didn't stop working because the world became chaotic, right? It stopped working because the global system was deliberately redesigned. And it's not even the global system, it's specifically the US system. Because the US for so long was looking for short-term efficiency. Companies were padding their bottom lines. And that is stopping because the writing is on the wall. You need to own your own manufacturing. Otherwise, someone can use and abuse you. And you don't want to be the global hegemon who can be blackmailed, essentially, economically blackmailed. So all major powers have shifted from optimizing for cost to optimizing for control. You have to control your supply chains, your manufacturing. So trade, regulation, supply chains are now all instruments of strategy. It's not neutral economics. It probably never existed. We just got used to being the best in the West, right? And we didn't have to worry about anything. But that time is up. That time is up. China's too big. We're too worried about China, or the US is, and subsequently we are too. Manufacturing has to be repatriated. And in this environment, dependence, it's not just a weakness. It's you're literally inviting dependence. And this is why Canada has been bit in the ass so hard with these tariffs. It's because we are an economic dependent of the US. Our whole manufacturing base is geared towards the US economy. It's not geared toward the Canadian economy. Everything is geared towards the US. And so we can complain about how the US is treating us unfairly, but we've treated ourselves unfairly by not caring. That's essentially what's happened. We just don't care enough, or the federal government hasn't cared enough about its citizens. It's always just been, hey, we have this great relationship, this great working relationship with the US. Let's just exploit it as much as we can. But now it's game over. Too bad, guys. Repatriating manufacturing, this isn't like nostalgia, and it's not even protectionism. It's literally for your own sake. It's essentially for your own sake. You need to do it. You need to own your own manufacturing for your domestic industry. Otherwise, you're a tool of somebody else. And it's literally about ensuring that when leverage is applied, that it doesn't work, or it works minimally. Like, you can just brush it off. You can say, oh, screw off. What are you doing? And so obviously efficiency is always going to matter, right? But your sovereignty matters more. Efficiency can always be dealt with. The robots now are amazing. I saw a textile factory in China, a massive one. It was quite literally like a 100,000 square foot factory, textile factory. It's just machines sewing clothing. I don't think we're that far away for the manufacturing industry either. But we can't develop that technology if we're not doing it domestically and innovating for that efficiency domestically. Then we're just going to rely on China, and then you're just a market. You're just a market then. And the countries that understand this, or understood this early, are setting the rules for everyone else to respond to. And that's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. China has figured it out. They're like, hey, we own the manufacturing of the world for mainly everything. That's all I have for you guys today. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave some comments in the comment section below. Merry Christmas to everybody. Hope you guys have a happy New Year as well. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple